Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Check. 1, 2, 3. Check.
Pick the wide receiver. Does that work?
We're starting this off right.
We're ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're here. Jaguars Roundtable. I think we might be able to start calling this little segment the Sports Reporters. Mia O'Brien, Matt Hays Carlyon here at the wheel.
And I'm Mitch Album.
There he is. He's ready to rumble. Where's John Saunders when you need him?
Ryan, all right?
Yeah.
We are here to debate the case for number one. The Jaguars, for a second straight season, will have the number one overall pick, Hays and Hays. Lot of thoughts, lots of discrepancy of who they should take, as opposed to last year, where it was obviously going to be Trevor Lawrence. And so, Matt Hays, we begin with you. Who is your number one overall pick if you are the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Well, I mean, I'm going receiver because I don't. First off, I'm not an NFL head. I'm not you got to pick an offensive tackle. You got to pick the defensive end. I don't do that, okay? I think, okay, what's going to help 16 be a better player? And then I think, okay, he needs a receiver. He needs a deep threat. He needs a guy that can run. I get all the idea of that's not what you do in the NFL. That's not where your money is. I get all of that, okay? And then I watched Jamar Chase last year, who, as a rookie, goes into the Bengals and completely changes that offense. Now, obviously, Joe Burrow being healthy was a huge part of that too, but they're not the same team without him. And I think Joe Burrow, being Joe Burrow, was facilitated by the idea that you've got a guy out there on the outside that will win individual battles and that can get behind the secondary. And they don't have that right now. So I get it. You'd like to move back and you'd like to get picks, but they're not getting what they want. But I look at it this way. This is a rare year where there's not really a true one. And I think you've got to set your sights that way. You can't ask for 3 1s for it. You could ask for a little less, yet still get some quality picks. Look, I'm not a GM, but I am zeroing in on I want to help 16. That's all that matters for me right now because I watch that offense. I watch those 3 and outs, and every single game, you can't get past midfield. So you got to do something to change that offense.
So who is the wide receiver that you're taking number one?
I would take Jameson Williams, but people are screaming to me, he's got an ACL. Why would you take somebody that's got an ACL? ACL surgeries in this day and age, guys are getting over them 7, 8, 9 months, and they're completely the same player. Some of them even gain speed. You got a guy like that can run, that will scare the hell out of defenses. To me, that's just so valuable. I get the defensive end talk. I get the offensive line talk. I'm sure they're probably going offensive line or defensive end. But it's just, I want somebody that's going to scare the hell out of the other defense.
Hayes, you initially, when this offseason first began, you penned a column in which you were lobbying for Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State and also a wide receiver 1. Are you still on the hot take train where you want a wide receiver at 1?
Well, it's what I think makes the most sense, but there's no way Trent Baalke's going to do that. I mean, there's just no way. So, I mean, and again, if it was going to be number 1, I think it would be Garrett Wilson. It would be a cleaner player, doesn't have the injury, and but I'd be fine with that. I mean, I don't think Trevor Lawrence needs an embarrassment of riches to succeed, but he's got to have a functional group around him. I'm not sure that Christian Kirk and Zay Jones have all of a sudden elevated this offense to where Trevor has the weapons that he needs. And, you know, adding Evan Ingram is great. I'm excited about it. But can you really count on having him more than 6 games? I mean, it's just there's a lot of durability issues there. So I'd be fine at receiver at 1. I think you can come back and address edge at 33. You can address interior offensive line and linebacker at 65 and 70. But to Matt's point, the NFL has a certain way of doing things, and there's absolutely no way Trent Baalke's going to take a receiver at 1. Ideally, they could trade back, but it doesn't appear like there'll be a market there. But yeah, I mean, these receivers aren't going to hit free agency. The way we're seeing the price tags, what teams are paying.
Right.
So you're never going to get you're to find an elite receiver. You're going to have to draft them. And you know, if you wait till 33, you're picking probably at best case scenario the 7th best receiver on the board, which could still be a nice player, but it might be the 8th or 9th. I mean, there's some mocks that have 8 receivers going in the first 32. So I wouldn't have a problem with it. I just don't think it's realistic to what the Jaguars are going to do.
Okay, so that is your take. But who is your case for number one overall, knowing, like you said, that the Jaguars and Trent Baalke probably won't go in the wide receiver direction?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Aiden Hutchinson. I think when you look at the edge rush, they just don't have enough at all. I think, Josh Allen is a nice player. Hopefully he continues to ascend and will become a great player, but he's not a great player now. And you've got really very little else on the other side that truly scares an offense. Dwan Smoot's a nice lunch pail, gets everything out of his athletic ability kind of player. But he's somebody that's going to always be in the 6 to 8 sack range. I mean, that's what he is. Kayvon Chason is a total zero. And so, when
our videographer,
tell us how you really think.
Yeah, I was going to say, our videographer.
Well, I mean, that's what I've seen. I mean, I hope he has 12 sacks this year.
Our videographer,
but is it unfair to say that Kayvon Chason through 2 years is a total zero for the Jaguars?
It's not unfair. But you know what's interesting? I get the feeling, and I don't know how you guys think, I get the feeling if there was a number one quarterback out there, a lock number one, that and the Jags had the second pick, not the first pick, okay? Whoever had the first pick takes the quarterback. I get the feeling they take Trayvon Walker instead of Hutchinson. But because Hutchinson is the guy that he's the number one, he's got to be the guy, they're going to do the safe thing and take Hutchinson.
Well, we talk about this every offseason when the NFL heads to Indianapolis for the Combine. It's the underwear Olympics. Don't fall into the trap of all of a sudden letting whatever happens here blind you to everything else. And when the first thing that you're talking to me about a prospect is what they did at the Combine, I get very nervous about that. And that's what the Walker buzz is. It's, well, look at his wingspan. Look at what he ran. All right. And yeah, he's a nice player, but I don't like taking a guy at one that everybody that was doing mock drafts in January had, somewhere in the top 15, usually between like 13 and 15 is where you saw him. He has a great combine. Okay, now we're going to take him at number one. There's just too much of a risk there, I think. And for this franchise to project anything is such a mistake based on their history. They need to get a guy that, if the floor for Aiden Hutchinson is that he's, Pete Prisco says basically, you might be drafting Grant Wistrom. That's the problem that I see with Hutchinson. He might be great, but the floor is probably Grant Wistrom. All right. Well, he had like 53 sacks in his career, which is only 2 behind Tony Bracken's, who everybody around here acts like, is a pass rushing machine. He was a good player, but 55 sacks is what Tony Bracken's.
If they get Grant Wistrom out of Aiden Hutchinson, they should be doing backflips,
right? But
down Water Street. Are you kidding me?
And that's the thing. Like, if the worry is that if he's not what you think he is, he's probably like a Grant Wistrom. All right. For this franchise, that's not a bad pick. And, you hope that he's a 100-sack guy, obviously. But I think the floor for Trayvon Walker is that he might be, incredibly forgettable as an NFL player. Right.
Yeah. Aiden
Hutchinson, 4.3, 3.4. That's the part that I'm very curious. And obviously, Matt, you were covering him when he was at Michigan and in college. He kind of played a little bit of everywhere. I mean, like when you look at the tape, this guy played outside linebacker. He even like slid into almost like a 3-tech, almost to a nose tackle at sometimes. Where does he actually project though? And does that then in turn change the role that Josh Allen has in this defense, knowing that Mike Caldwell is going to play multiple fronts? That's
the issue. I think when you're at 4.3, then who's your tight end? Who's the guy that's got to deal with that tight end? And you don't want Josh Allen to be that guy because he's the guy with the athleticism, with the bend. He's the guy. If you look at these two in their college, I mean, Josh Allen is a much better project coming out of college than Hutchinson was. So I think you're putting Aiden Hutchinson over there. Does he have the heft to be that type of guy that's got to deal with that size? I don't know. I think he's better fitted 3-4, where you stick him on the edge and you say, get the quarterback. I don't care about anything else you do. Get the quarterback.
So the 3-4 that we saw this past season would still stand if you draft Aiden Hutchinson.
Oh, yeah. It's perfect for that.
And just to clarify, the guy that everyone was talking about that I still believe in, I mean, I know a lot of other people say red flag, Kayvon Thibodeau, we're out on him. He's a no-go. Yeah?
I have heard some really disturbing things about him.
Really?
In terms of interviews and things like that and attitude. And again, I like him as a player on the field. I liked him as a player. I think I like him better than Hutchinson as a player. But again, look at this franchise's recent history. Are you really going to bring in a basket case at one, which is what you might be doing? Maybe he turns out to be the most mature guy in the NFL, but there is certainly enough warnings about work ethic, about how he feels about himself. I think it'd be a real risk to take him for a franchise that has had locker room issues very recently. Like, that's the thing with Hutchinson. Like, you may not. I don't love Aiden Hutchinson as a prospect, but there's nothing I don't really like. It's like everything is. He's almost like Scotty Scheffler right now in golf. Like, he doesn't do anything outstanding, but everything is pretty good. You don't have to worry about anything. And he wins.
This guy's a pretty good putter, man.
But he's not like, if you look at his stats on everything, like, he's not like
no, you're right.
The best on tour.
You're 100% right.
He's just really good across the board.
Whereas Thibodeau, you go, whoa,
right.
That dude's got some explosion. Yeah, I agree.
We don't want risks. That's clear. We can't, this organization can't afford to take risks.
Correct.
So then my case for number one, why not take the player that everyone says is the most polished, is the most NFL ready, in Evan Neal? And by taking him, obviously, you just franchise tagged Cam Robinson for a second straight year. That's your left tackle, at least for this season. With Evan Neal, he can play left or right tackle. He can slide into guard. Do you want to take a guard at number one overall? Probably not. But also people are saying you don't want to take a wide receiver number one overall. So, like, what can you actually take number one overall in this day and age when there's not a clear-cut quarterback? So my thing with Evan Neal is, if he truly is the most NFL-ready player, regardless of position, if he can play multiple positions, he has 13 starts at guard, 12 at right tackle, 15 at left tackle during his 3 seasons at Alabama. And moreover, I personally am not too confident that they are going to get a deal done with Cam Robinson on an extension, because they could have done it last year. They could have done it so far in the first 2 months since he was tagged this year, and they don't seem any closer to doing that. So why not have a guy that's insurance for you, especially because you also have Walker Little, and now all of a sudden, like, those guys all have position flexibility. Juwan Taylor, not so much. He tells us he doesn't want to play guard, whatever. Best ability is availability, so I think he might renege on that a little bit in the months to come. But get the best 5 guys out there. Look what the Indianapolis Colts have done. I'm playing quarterback for the Colts the last 4 or 5 years since Andrew Luck retired, and yet they're still competitive come December.
You can't throw a fade, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, I can't really grasp an NFL-sized football properly. So
I look at this, and I'm interested to hear...
your hands are bigger than Kenny Pickett's.
Yay,
I'm interested to hear Hayes' comments about this. I look at it, and if you pick Evan Neal, he is clearly the cleanest guy in the draft. If you pick him, he's better than the guy you got now. You're paying that guy $16 million. So I think they've made a decision of, okay, the edge is probably more important for us. So what they're doing is, we'll get Cam. If he plays really well this year, we'll re-sign him. If not, he's gone. We'll move Walker Little over to left. We'll find a right tackle later in this draft, be it, maybe it's Kennard from Kentucky or whoever. Down the road, 3rd or 4th rounder. We'll find a tackle.
And they did go to the Kentucky Pro Day extensively, several of the Jag staffers.
So we'll build something up there. I just think I'm interested to hear your opinion, Hayes. I think they've made their decision that, okay, if it doesn't work with Cam, we're going to move Walker over there, and then we'll move forward.
The thing that surprised me about Cam Robinson was how Trent Baalke talked about me. I think you asked him the question when he met with us like a month ago. Because I've always thought the reason they've tagged Cam Robinson the last 2 years is out of desperate panic of what are we going to do if we don't have him? Not so much love for the player. So it was surprising to hear Trent talk about, well, this is a guy that loves football. He's played through multiple injuries in which no one really knew about because he loves football. And I've been around guys that wouldn't have played through those injuries. So there seemed to be an affection for Cam as a player. So when Trent talked about the extension, it was like, wow, okay, I figured he'd be tagged again and then would hit the market. And so if they can get an extension done with Cam Robinson, I think that's great. But if they can't, then I think Evan Neal should absolutely be in play, because what are you doing at that spot? I mean, maybe it's Walker Little. Juwan Taylor looks like this is his last year here unless the light comes on. So I think investing in the offensive line does make sense. I wouldn't have a problem if they wanted to go Evan Neal at 1, because I do think he can be a really good left tackle. And look, if you get something done with Cam Robinson, maybe you play Evan Neal at right, and Walker Little, maybe you try him out at guard. I mean, there's ways in which I think somebody like Doug Peterson can still maximize it, and you're not going to be sitting there saying, why did we invest in this particular resource, whether it's a second rounder in Walker Little, or I think he's going to figure it out where to put these guys.
So let me tell you my problem with that real quick. and this is what really bothered me, because to me, looking at that, I feel like they wasted Trevor's first season because it was a terrible offense, it was a terrible coaching staff, and there was nothing that went right for him. Everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong for him. So I feel like if you get Evan Neal and you stick him at guard or you stick him at right tackle, you are literally wasting a season for him when you know he's going to be your left tackle. You know you need him to be at left tackle to understand what it's like to play the most important position on the line in this league. That's my only problem with it. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you that at some point it's just got to be the 5 best guys out there. But, man, I would hate to have that guy get drafted and not be your left tackle.
Well, the other thing, too, with Cam Robinson is he has durability issues. I mean, he's had, I think, 1 season in which he started every game, and it was a few years ago.
I think it was his rookie season.
It might be.
Second season, wasn't it?
No, second season's when he tore his ACL.
Yeah, but he's only got 1 of the 5 that he's played every game. I think he missed 3 games last year, 3 or 4.
Because Walker Little played 3 games.
Correct.
And the Jags won 2 out of the 3.
Right. So, I think there's also that to consider.
That's my big thing.
Walker Little for president.
Yeah. As well. So
put him in the hall. Put him in the Pride.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to look at it and say, well, can we really count on Cam Robinson to give us 17 starts next year? So, I mean, again, in taking Evan Neal, maybe he starts somewhere else with the idea of, look, I mean, history tells us eventually he might have to play left tackle.
The one name I do want to touch upon, the final name before we do wrap, is Ekwonu. In talking to people in the building, that is reportedly Doug Peterson's guy. What makes this interesting, especially to Matt's point, is that he is projected to maybe eventually move to guard, if not forever. And again, do you want to take a guard at 1? No, you really don't. But this guy has played left tackle. He's played guard. He probably could kick out to right tackle as well. And then if you do trade Jawan Taylor, you release him, whatever it is, you make him your swing tackle, then he becomes your right tackle. We've heard Leon Searcy say on primetime that it's, he's the nastiest guy in the draft. He's raw. It would kind of be like Trayvon Walker, where it's going to take a little bit to mold him, but he also could have high upside. But to you guys, is it Evan Neal? It's Evan Neal over Ekwonu, regardless of what Doug says?
No, I mean, I could be talked into Ekwonu, particularly if that's who Doug views as the better player.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, I think he's more polished than Walker. I mean, I think he's done enough at the collegiate level that I'd feel comfortable putting him in somewhere immediately and feeling really good about it. And look, I mean, Doug Peterson's basic theory here may be, let's just build up the trenches and beat the crap out of everybody.
Like the Colts were doing
and we'll
for a while there.
Figure out all the rest. So, is it an offensive lineman at 1? Is it a edge player at 1? That would make all the sense in the world, because again, the best way to go from being awful to average is just start winning the street fight every week. And at number 1, if you get a kid like Ekwonu, he's going to help you win that street fight.
And I don't. It's the same with wide receiver. I don't care if you take a guard at 1. I don't care. He's the best player. Take him. You think the Colts would have taken Quentin Nelson if they knew what they got at 1? Of course they would have. So that doesn't
just like the
bother
Bengals
me.
would have taken Jamar Chase at 1.
Yeah, it's just I don't. To me, it's just the player, and I know every time it's like banging your head against the big NFL shield every single day. You can't take a guard. You can't take a receiver. Okay, I mean, great. Then you're just going to do what this franchise has done: lose, 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 lose.
Everyone will be making the case for number 1 as we count down to the NFL draft, which kicks off on April 28th. Excited to see where the Jaguars go with that top overall pick, boys.